Two people can spend the same amount of time learning the exact same thing. Same hours, same teacher, same videos, same book, same practice schedule, but somehow one person starts improving way faster than the other. One person picks it up quickly, the other keeps feeling stuck. One person seems to understand the pattern. The other keeps repeating the same mistakes. And from the outside, it looks obvious. We say they're just talented, or they're naturally smart, or their brain just works differently. But a lot of the time, that is not actually what is happening, because learning faster is not always about having a better brain. It is often about using your brain differently. And the weirdest part is that most people think learning means putting information into their head, reading more, watching more, listening more, spending more time with the material. But faster learners usually do something else. They do not just consume more information. They interact with it differently. Imagine two people trying to learn guitar. The first person watches tutorials for hours. They learn the names of chords. They watch someone explain strumming patterns. They save videos. They feel like they are learning because everything makes sense while they are watching it. The second person watches a short explanation, then immediately tries to play. They mess up. Their fingers hurt. The chord sounds terrible. They have to stop, adjust, try again, and figure out what went wrong. After 1 hour, the first person might feel more comfortable, but the second person has more useful information. They know exactly where their fingers fail. They know which chord change is slow. They know what part of the rhythm breaks. They know what to fix. That is one of the biggest differences between slow learning and fast learning. Slow learners often spend too much time feeling like they understand. Fast learners find out where they do not. This happens because your brain is not a camera. It does not perfectly record everything you see and hear. You can watch someone explain something clearly and feel like you understand it, but that feeling can be misleading. It is called the illusion of understanding. The information feels familiar, so your brain mistakes that familiarity for knowledge. This is why you can watch a math video and think, that makes sense, then look at a blank problem 5 minutes later and have no idea what to do. It is why you can read a chapter, highlight half the page, and still forget most of it later. It is why you can watch someone draw, code, edit, cook, sing, or play a sport and feel like you are absorbing the skill, even though your brain has not actually been forced to use it yet. Real learning usually starts when the material stops feeling smooth. It starts when you have to remember without looking, solve without help, explain without copying, perform without someone guiding every step. That struggle is not a sign that you are bad at learning. That struggle is the learning. Your brain changes when it has to work. When you try to recall something from memory, your brain has to search for it. When you make a mistake, your brain gets a signal that something needs to be corrected. When you practice a skill and fail, your brain starts adjusting the tiny details that theory alone cannot teach you. That is why some people learn faster. They reach the struggle sooner. Most people avoid the struggle because it feels bad. It makes them feel stupid. It makes them feel behind. It makes them feel like they are not talented. So instead, they go back to the comfortable part. They reread the notes. They re-watch the tutorial. They review the same section. They stay near the feeling of learning without entering the harder part where learning actually happens. But faster learners treat confusion differently. They do not see confusion as proof that they are failing. They see it as a map. Confusion tells them where the weak spot is. If you are learning a language and you cannot form a sentence out loud, that is not random failure. That is a signal. If you are learning to edit videos and your transitions look awkward, that is a signal. If you are learning basketball and your shot keeps missing to the left, that is a signal. If you are studying and you cannot explain the concept without notes, that is a signal. The mistake is not the enemy. The mistake is the feedback. And this is where fast learners separate themselves from everyone else. They create more feedback loops. A feedback loop is simple. You try something, you see what happened, you adjust, then you try again. That loop is how almost every skill improves, but most people make the loop too slow. They study for weeks before testing themselves. They practice privately for months before showing anyone. They avoid criticism. They wait until they feel ready. They keep preparing, planning, and consuming because it feels safer than discovering what is wrong. Fast learners shorten the loop. They test themselves earlier. They practice before they feel ready. They ask what went wrong. They compare their attempt to a better example. They look for the gap between what they wanted to do and what actually happened. That gap is where improvement lives. Think about someone learning to draw. A slow learner might watch hours of art tutorials, buy supplies, save references, and wait until they feel ready. A faster learner might draw something badly on purpose, compare it to the reference, notice the proportions are wrong, then redraw just the head 10 times. The faster learner is not magically better. They are getting clearer information. They are not asking, "Am I good?" They are asking, "What exactly is wrong, and what do I fix next?" That question matters because learning is too big when it stays vague. If you tell yourself, "I need to get better at writing," your brain has no clear target. Better how? Better descriptions, better dialogue, better pacing, better openings, better sentence flow. But if you say, "My openings are too slow, so I am going to practice writing 10 stronger first paragraphs," now your brain has something specific to improve. Fast learners break skills into pieces. They do not practice the whole thing randomly. They isolate the weak part. A person trying to learn piano does not just play the entire song badly from start to finish over and over. They find the two measures that keep falling apart and repeat those. A person trying to get better at speaking does not just say, "I need to be more confident." They might practice pausing, making eye contact, or starting sentences more clearly. A person trying to study better does not just say, "I need to learn biology." They might realize they cannot explain cell respiration, so they focus on that one process until it makes sense. This is called deliberate practice. It is not just practicing more, it is practicing with a target, and that is why time alone can be misleading. Someone can spend 10 hours repeating the same easy thing and barely improve. Someone else can spend 2 hours attacking the exact part they are weak at and make more progress. The clock does not tell the whole story. The quality of attention matters. Faster learners are usually more active. They ask questions while they learn. They predict answers before seeing them. They pause and test themselves. They explain ideas in their own words. They try to use the information before they feel fully comfortable. That last part is important. Most people want to understand first and practice later. But often, practice is what creates understanding. You do not fully understand a concept by looking at it. You understand it by trying to use it and seeing where it breaks. This is why teaching something is so powerful. When you explain an idea to someone else, you quickly find out whether you actually understand it. The moment you cannot explain a step, your brain exposes the gap. The same thing happens when you write from memory, solve a problem without notes, or try to perform a skill in real conditions. The brain learns from retrieval, not just exposure. Retrieval means pulling information out of your memory instead of putting it in again. It feels harder than rereading, but that difficulty is exactly why it works. Every time you recall something, you strengthen the path back to it. That is why flashcards can work. That is why practice tests work. That is why explaining a topic without looking works. They force the brain to retrieve. Rereading feels easier because the answer is already there. But when the answer is already there, your brain can relax. It can recognize the information without truly owning it. Recognition is not the same as recall. You can recognize a song when it plays and still not be able to sing it from memory. You can recognize a solution when someone explains it and still not be able to solve the problem alone. You can recognize a good sentence when you read it and still not be able to write one yourself. Fast learners do not rely only on recognition. They practice recall. But there is another reason some people learn faster, and it has nothing to do with intelligence. They manage their attention better. Learning requires attention, not just time near the material. Actual attention. Focused. Uncomfortable. Mentally present attention. You can spend 3 hours with a book open and barely learn anything if your attention keeps drifting. You can spend 30 focused minutes testing yourself and make real progress. This is why people sometimes say they studied all day but still feel like nothing stuck. They were near the material, but their brain was not fully engaged with it. Your brain prioritizes what feels important. If you are distracted every few seconds, the information never gets a strong enough signal. It stays weak. It fades quickly. Fast learners protect the signal. They remove distractions. They practice in shorter, sharper sessions. They know when they are actually focused and when they are just pretending to work. And this matters because learning also depends on energy. A tired brain learns slower. A stressed brain learns differently. A sleep-deprived brain struggles to store information properly. You can have the right technique and still learn badly if your brain is exhausted. Sleep is especially important because your brain does not only learn while you are practicing, it also organizes and strengthens information after practice. That is why something can feel impossible one day and slightly easier the next. Your brain keeps working in the background. This does not mean sleep magically replaces practice. It means practice gives your brain material and sleep helps process it. So when people learn faster, it can look like talent from the outside. But underneath, there are usually patterns. They test themselves earlier. They make mistakes sooner. They get feedback faster. They focus on weak points. They use the skill instead of only watching it. They practice recall. They protect their attention. They let their brain recover. None of these things look impressive in the moment. In fact, fast learning often looks messy. It looks like getting answers wrong. It looks like failing in practice. It looks like asking basic questions. It looks like trying before you are ready. It looks like being uncomfortable on purpose. That is why people miss it. They see the final result and assume the person was naturally gifted. They do not see the awkward attempts, the corrections, the feedback, the small adjustments, and the repeated failures that made the result possible. Talent exists. Some people really do have advantages. They may have better starting points, better memory, better coordination, better teachers, or more experience with similar skills. But talent is not the whole story. And for most people, the bigger problem is not that they are incapable of learning. It is that they are using slow learning methods. They spend too much time consuming and not enough time doing. They avoid mistakes instead of studying them. They practice what feels comfortable instead of what needs work. They measure learning by hours instead of feedback. They wait to feel ready instead of starting the loop. So if you want to learn faster, the question is not, how do I become smarter? The better question is, how do I find my mistakes faster? Because the faster you find the mistake, the faster you can fix it. And the faster you fix it, the faster you improve. If you are studying, close the notes and try to explain the idea from memory. If you cannot, you found the gap. If you are learning a skill, attempt the real version earlier. If it falls apart, you found the gap. If you are practicing something creative, compare your work to someone better. Not to feel bad, but to see what is missing. If you are stuck, do not just repeat the whole thing again. Find the smallest part that is breaking and practice that. This is the hidden reason some people learn faster than others. They are not always learning more. They are learning with better signals. They turn confusion into information. They turn mistakes into directions. They turn practice into feedback. And once you understand that learning stops being this mysterious thing that only talented people can do, it becomes a loop. Try, fail, notice, adjust, repeat. The people who learn the fastest are not the people who avoid mistakes. They are